blocker of Hextall. Fed around to the far side. Flyers a little lax in picking up Robinson, who puts it cross ice off the body. Breakaway Eklund. He's gone for the hat trick. He's in. Shot. Score. Hat trick. Pelle Eklund. That for Philadelphia in their history is their 12th playoff hat trick, and the other one this year, Tim Kerr against the Islanders in the first game of that set.
Everybody, it's Isaiah, just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
And we are back. It is Isaiah, and it is the O&B Puckcast. Yeah, we're back real soon. This is episode number 157, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Summit Adjusters, and, of course, Jim South Street, 400 South Street, 40 years of the best Philly cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. And if you live down near there, check them out. If you're down there, you got to have one. And of course, they use DoorDash. So if you're in proximity, they'll get that food right to your door. So it's got to be in your bucket list. Might be, probably, got to be the best cheesesteak in Philadelphia. And you get plain without, like I do. So you can even do that. So again, Jim South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. And with that, let's bring in our panel. The great Dan Silver is away. If you listened in the last couple of weeks, he's over in London on assignment. But we have back from hiatus, Chef B. Chef, how are you tonight?
Very good. Got some draft talk coming. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And just before we introduce our special guest, just a reminder that the O&B Puckcast is on 12 podcast formats. We can be followed on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. And of course, you can follow us on Apple, SoundCloud. We have a Facebook page, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. And if you could give us a rating and most importantly, subscribe, we really appreciate it. It moves us up the charts when people look for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. So without any further ado, let's bring on the man we know as the Draft Analyst from thedraftanalyst.com, Steve Kournianos. Steve, welcome to the O&B.
Isaiah, Chef, what's going on?
Well, I don't know about you, man. I'm ready for this draft, and there's all these rumors about, Flyers are, maybe considering trading the pick, and now lately they just said, nah, we're going to keep this number 5 overall. It will be, if they make the pick, only the 8th time in franchise history that they picked top 5. So it's a big deal for them. They have to make the right decision. I think they squandered a pick last year by trading for Rasmus Ristolainen. I think they squandered an opportunity to recoup that pick by trading him at the deadline. We could get into that a little bit later. But Steve, you're well known for your draft expertise and the like. And we just want to get a handle on how you see this draft in comparison to other recent ones in terms of quantity, quality, how many NHL players as a percentage of the usual do you think we're going to see here?
Well, you got to, if you want to assess this draft, you got to start all the way back to the 2021 Under-18 World Championships in Texas. And that was like the first big scouting event. Remember, everyone couldn't scout live because of all the COVID stuff. And so all the scouts, every GM, everyone went down there and they're at this tournament. And I would say 75% of the best players in that tournament were kids for not the 21 draft, but kids for the 22 draft. So the mood coming out of that tournament was very positive surrounding this draft class, because you had Shane Wright. He was the consensus number one for a couple of years now. Remember, he had exceptional status. He's allowed to play in the CHL or the OHL 15 years old. So people knew about him for a long time. OHL Rookie of the Year in 2019-20. And so he goes to this tournament and he lights it up. He's, I think, second in scoring, which is fantastic. Team Canada's captain. They win gold. And on top of that, you had, the guy Miroshnichenko from Russia. You had Joachim Kamel from Finland, Danila Yurov from Russia. So it was a very positive vibe coming out of it. Brad Lambert for Finland as well. Mm-hmm. So, you fast forward to the offseason. We're waiting for the European seasons to start, August, September. And a lot of these kids got off to good starts. But the thing is, a lot of these kids were too good for the junior leagues. And so they had to play in the adult leagues. That's what they do in Europe. And this was going to be a European-heavy draft, I guess, so to speak, because a lot of the Russia, Sweden, they had really strong classes. The Czechs, the Slovaks, we might have 4 Slovaks in the first round this year. So, when those kids are playing against men, it skews the stats a little bit. And then on top of that, Shane Wright doesn't have a great start to his season. And so now everything it starts going haywire. Who are we ranking? Who are the top kids? So I would say that it's really an average draft, maybe slightly above average for 2 reasons. Number one, it's loaded with offensive defensemen, not big, mean physical defensemen. There's plenty of those. You get them in every draft. But this draft has power play quarterbacks, point-producing defensemen. I'm not going to say there's going to be another Cale McCarr in there, but you're going to see guys from this draft class eventually be a number one, be a power play specialist, put up 50, 60 points a year. The other thing is it's a very strong draft for the USN TDP. You're looking at maybe 6 or 7 kids that might go in the first round. And that's usually a gauge on how strong of a draft class it is. So I don't think it's weak. I think it's confusing a little. There aren't any tiers. You can't say, all right, this kid's definitely number one. These kids are going to 3 to 5. It's really a little bit all over the place. But because of the cap, because of these kids, a lot of them playing against adults, you're going to see them in the NHL a lot sooner. So you'll probably see 2 or 3 in the NHL next year. A lot of these kids, especially the defensemen, physically mature, 6'5", 6'6" kids. Yeah. But I'm positive. My vibe surrounding this draft class is positive. I've been following it for almost, 14, 15 months now. And you follow it every day for that long. You start to get attached to the kids. And I think history's going to be kind to it, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I remember the 2007 draft, and I said it was Pat Kane, JVR, a couple other players, and not much. And that was a very fruitful draft.
Sure.
Much of the way through. So I'm really guarded when I hear that there's, what the projection is, particularly if it's a negative or pessimistic projection. You just never know, especially when you throw the COVID factor in, like you were talking about. So I think the concentration right now with a lot of the Flyers fans is, of course, centered around that number 5 pick, which at the latest we have the Flyers are determined to keep, which I think is a smart move. Just a general feeling about that spot, some of the advantages of that, maybe instead of having to roll the dice and being that first 2 and just kind of like 17 with the Flyers, it was Hischier and Patrick, but no, it really wasn't. Now that we look back, right?
Well, okay, I know it's cliche, but when you're drafting top 5 in at least an average draft, you're going to walk away with a guy that you could automatically identify as the centerpiece of your farm system, right? So the Flyers in the past, they graduated Farabee, still waiting on Morgan Frost, but you got Cam York now. He's about to maybe challenge for a full-time job this year. Yes. You got Forster. If he's healthy, he's going to probably be a full-timer in Lehigh Valley, maybe make the club out of camp. But there really isn't like a superstar potential. You know what I mean? Like we're waiting on a lot of these kids. We're still not sure about them. Of course, the injury is always a big deal too with the Flyers picks in recent years. But I think with this draft, no matter whom you draft, whether it be a defenseman, a center, a forward, whether they're European or Canadian or American, they're going to be the best prospect in the pool. But you hire Tortorella, it's probably going to, he's really not too keen on playing kids right away. So, maybe if they draft a big kid like Jiricek, a defenseman who's physical, or maybe Nemeth because they played against men, that they might be able to sneak in. But I think the Flyers pool is still pretty deep, where the competition is going to be pretty hectic. But even still, that you're looking at a difference maker, a guy that every year when you look at the prospect pool rankings and the top 50 prospects in the league, that kid the Flyers drafted 5th overall is going to be in, let's say, the top 10 or 15 of those lists.
Gotcha. So there's this controversy looking away from the Flyers and up the list temporarily where, Shane Wright is, in some people's minds, maybe not the best player in terms of projection. And that's how you draft, right? I mean, you're not drafting for what he is now. You're drafting what he's going to be in 3 to 5 years at a very minimum. So, you have players like Shane Wright, Juraj Slafkovsky, and Logan Cooley that are at the top of a lot of people's lists. And you have some people where Matthew Savoy, because of just the obvious talent that he has in spite of the size, with the way the league has changed, is in that realm. And there's others like Cutter Gauthier, who's been a riser. Oh, but gee, can he play center? No, well, it doesn't really matter. He's that good. What's your feeling on some of these players, and maybe your ranking on some of these?
Well, my ranking is a lot different from the consensus rankings. Okay. I'm very, my goal, I don't try to predict the draft. Okay. I try to project who's going to be 10, 15 years from now when we talk about the 2022 draft. Who are going to be the 10 best players or the 15 best players? And history tells us so many things that you're going to find most likely an elite defenseman in round 2 or 3, right? You're going to find like a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, Roman Josi, Adam Fox, not first round picks. And then you go even further down, Subban, Duncan Keith. I mean, on and on and on. Forwards is a little different, though. Like the Hart Trophy winners and the MVP and Art Ross's winners, those guys usually come in the top 5. So, again, it really depends on what way you view your organization right now. I think the Flyers are in a situation where they really need like a dynamic all-star kind of we're coming into Philly, right? We saw that used to be with Bobby Clark, and then it went, in a way, well, the mid-'80s Flyers were kind of like a committee, but then you went to Lindros, and then from Lindros it went into, Claude Giroux. You need at least one guy, one star. And so I'm thinking that if the Flyers are looking for that, they could find it. But like you mentioned size. Are you looking for the big, dominant physical center? Are you looking for the speedy wing that could score 40 goals? You're looking for the guy that just makes everybody around them better, like a Claude Giroux. So I really, people say best player available. It all depends on what the clubs view or consider best player. It doesn't mean the best stats or the fastest skater or the hardest slap shot. There's a lot of variables involved. So I'm positive about the group. I think that there are all going to be a couple of guys that you'll see, especially in the coming out of the second round, that we're going to be like, wait, what happened here? So when I do my rankings, I try to guess. It's all a guessing game, but I'm trying to say, you know what? Like that kid dominated the postseason and no one expected him. That's a big game player right there when he's 17. He's probably going to be a big game player when he's 20. So let me, rank him high. And it's kind of like rewarding a kid for what they did. As far as Shane Wright goes, at least he had a really good season. It's just that expectations were so high, and he played on a team with like 7 guys that averaged a point a game. So there was always so much puck to go around. So I think, people are knocking him like, oh, the effort's not there. I mean, what do you want the kid to do? He almost had 100 points. We've seen the pair guys like Eric Stahl, Rick Nash. They didn't have great OHL seasons in their drafting. They turned out to be, all-star caliber. So I'm not gonna shortchange the kids. These kids did their job. They did really well, and it's on the organization really to develop them the right way, put them in the right situation, teach them the playbook, and then just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, Chef, you wanted to chime in there?
No, I was just wondering, like you had mentioned 2007. I was just wondering if, Steve, is there any other drafts? I mean, there's not so definitive the rankings. I get that. But there's patches of like this group are comparable and this group are comparable. Have you looked back at any other drafts and can you draw some kind of experience from those assessments to see, to generate where you get your ideas from about how this crop is going to be? There's
2 drafts that come to mind. One more than the other. 2012, is a big one because that was the Nail Yakupov draft. And we all know now in retrospect that he was one of the worst, if not the worst, first overall pick in the history of the game. But he was a consensus number one from wire to wire. So it wasn't like there was any controversy. The public didn't know what was going on, but behind closed doors, the scouts did. And they knew that he was a flawed kid. And, Edmonton's brain trust said, no, we're going to take him anyway. But that was a defense-heavy draft. That draft had Trouba. It had Morgan Riley. It had Lindholm. It had Dumba. I think that in this draft, the best players more than likely are probably going to be defensemen just because there's so many of them. There's like 40 defensemen that you'll see ranked between the first and the second early third round. There's a lot. And these defensemen, some are big and mean, some are fast and skilled. So I think, but 2008, I always compared Wright to like a Stamkos Taves like hybrid. Stamkos, he was an electrifying play for Sarnia back in 08, but you never looked at him like, oh, he's a generational guy. Like he's going to be a Crosby or McDavid. So, Wright with that wrist shot, and it's an elite wrist shot. I mean, he's going to eventually, when he gets older and learns, to improve his technique, he's going to be shooting the puck like Stamkos probably. And so, but what after Stamkos, you had all those defensemen, right? Peter Angelo, Bogosian, Drew Doughty.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are the ones that come to mind. I'm going to say when all is said and done, you're probably going to get maybe 2 or 3 Hall of Fame caliber players, about 4 to 6 all-star types, and then a whole bunch of depth guys and, guys that didn't live up to expectations, just like pretty much every average draft year.
Gotcha. What would you say about those who think that Slafkovsky is probably more deserving of being a first overall?
I mean, I don't see it. I got him ranked 7th. He dominated tournaments. And listen, I love the kid. When I rank kids like high, I don't rank them like, oh, he's got problems. Let me put him at 7. Like I watch a lot. He's
a good player. You'll take
he's
him,
a good
right?
player. And the thing is he played. It's like we talked about in the beginning. How this guy was, he played in the Finnish junior leagues for a couple of years. Was a borderline all-star with the U20 circuit. So they bumped him up to TPS. TPS is a very competitive organization. They want to win. So they're not going to just give the kid ice time because he's a high draft pick. On top of that, he's not even Finnish. He's a Slovak. So, TBS didn't owe him anything. And he didn't have a good first half. He was there, but he played in these tournaments, the Ivan Halinka to start the season, then the Olympic Games, and then the Men's World Championships. And he lit it up. Now, he did light up some pretty weak countries, though. He lit up Italy and Kazakhstan, so it wasn't like he was doing it against Canada. But when you watch him play, you see what scouts see, okay? The hands, the IQ, the high panic threshold, the puck protection. He's a big 6 foot, 6'4"? He's a playmaker with soft hands. So you don't see a lot of those guys often. But
6'4", yeah.
He really wasn't all that productive in the Finnish league. And I know that stats aren't everything, but when I watched the postseason, and he was better in the second half at TPS. When you watch the postseason, there were times where his line were just in the defensive zone the whole time. And I'm like, all right, I know he's making small plays in the defensive zone, but so again, the tournaments that this kid had were fantastic, but I'm not a tournament guy. I follow the leagues and the playoffs. That's how I rate my guys. I want to see how they do because that's your comfort zone when you're in your league play. The locker room, the coaches, the system, which is going to be what it's like in the NHL, where you're not going to be playing a tournament, 7 tournaments a year. You're going to be taking the same route to go to the rink from your house. You're going to be you're going to take the same fly out of the same airport, stay at the same hotels, have the same roommate. That's not the case with these tournaments. So it's a slippery slope. I understand why people are all into it, but I'm not budging from Wright. Wright deserves it. He had like a bad couple of months, 2 bad games at the World Juniors, and people flipped out. I'm not budging. And Cooley, though, is a different story, though. He's a kid, a Pennsylvania kid, albeit Pittsburgh area.
Pittsburgh, yeah.
But he could be. He's a stud. He's a difference-making kid that just everything that he does with the puck. You see,
is he number 2? I mean, why don't we go down your list if you don't mind? Like, if you have Shane Wright number 1.
I got Wright. Well, here's the thing. So this year has been an experimental year for me.
Okay.
Back in January, I said I'm going to make my ranking in January. I am not going to budge with my first round. I'm not going to change a thing. I'm not going to go off of this kid had a bad 10 games. And I learned my lesson from 2 players. Jordan Kyrou, he had a bad slump. I said, I'm not going to draft him in the first round. Put him in the second round. Now the kid's a freaking all-star. And then Jesse Puljujarvi had a great second half, and I felt, and I bumped him up, and he's probably, not going to make it that much noise. So this year I said, I'm not. So my top 5 is going to be very different from anybody else's. So I have number 1, I got Joachim Kamel, the tough Finnish kid.
Yeah.
Number 2, who was, by the way, destroyed the same league Slavkovsky was in for the first 2 months of the season. Then he got hurt. So Slavkovsky's in the same league. He's not producing. The other kid was the leading scorer. He wore the gold helmet. Number 3, I have Yurov, the Russian kid, who played. Listen, he played in the KHL. He played for a team that went to the KHL finals against Fedotov, the poor goalie that is having problems right now. That the Flyers signed.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And then number 4, I got Savoy, and number 5 is Cooley. So 4 of my top 5, really all 5 of my guys are forwards, and they're all skilled forwards, and they're under, I guess, 6'1", 6 foot.
Okay, so it would seem that if the Flyers, and that's a little bit off the board, and let's just take the Russian factor in and say that the Flyers are not going to take a Russian player right now, especially what they're dealing with Ivan Fedotov, and that's a very fluid situation. Who knows how that ends up? But so who would be next? Because Yurov would not probably be someone.
No. Like I said, my ranking is different. I know it is. It's not what other people do, but I have my justifications and my reasons for it. But from a mock draft standpoint, no, Yurov is probably going to be like a 10 to 15 range, 15-20 range.
Gotcha. Chef, go ahead.
I was just wondering, out of this potential crop here that we see, top 25 range, let's just say, keep it simple. Who's going to surprise everybody? You say your stuff is different. The way you do it is different. Who's going to be the one that's going to be like, oh, my God, he popped up at 4 or 5 or 6 and he jumped leapfrog 10, 15 people to be taken that early? And who's somebody that should be on the radar that maybe we're not looking at because we're looking at top 5?
I think one of the defensemen. Well, we know that Nemeth and Jiricek, they're going to be, and they're different defensemen. Jiricek is more like a physical, mean guy, and Nemeth is more like a playmaking, controlled, puck possession type of a guy. They're probably going to both go top 5. Listen, how many GMs are ex-defensemen or guys that played in the 80s and 90s who remember the wars and the dead puck era, where they remember how you need to have big defensemen. Look at the playoffs this past year. Violent. Wayne Gretzky himself said, this is big boy hockey. This is how it's supposed to be. And so I think that they're going to be GMs. They don't care how many points a kid puts up. If he's 5'7" or 5'10", 5'11", they're not going to draft him. They're going to say, we want beef. So with that, you got to look at, guys like Owen Pickering from the WHL. You got to look at Mintyukov, the defenseman from the OHL. These are big kids that could create offense. The kid Leon Bixel, the big mean defenseman out of Sweden. I mean, this guy is one of the meanest kids I've ever seen play. He Swiss kid goes to the Swedish league and he's popping everybody. And ironically, someone targeted him, a smaller prospect targeted him and nailed him from behind and ended his season. So those are the guys that I think you're going to see a couple of defensemen go really high. I think the main forwards we're looking at, the Kamels, the Yurovs, the Brad Lamberts, maybe Marco Kasper. I got him ranked in the 20s. I call him a little bit like a Ryan O'Reilly, where he's this tough, physical two-way center who hits. He skates really well, good puck control, kills penalties. He's been playing against men for the last couple of years in Sweden, and he also, has played big games because his program Rogla is good. So he's played in the playoffs and stuff. And then you got the big Swedish trio of Ogren, Oslund, and Lekkerimäki. All 3 of those guys might go top 10. That's the kind of seasons that they had. So, but Oslund obviously, the smaller side. But those are just names off the top of my head. I mean, it could be Chesley, the defenseman out of the U.S. program who could skate and hit, could score goals as well from the back end. But I think you're going to see a lot of defensemen go early. I think that teams realize that even though it is a deep draft for defensemen, that the skilled forwards, there is a separation there. When you take Savoy, Connor Geeky, Lekkerimaki, Yurov, those guys, they've separated themselves, I think, from a lot of forwards, whereas the defensemen, it's a little bit more up in the air.
Yet it appears as if we go by conventional wisdom, which can really be dangerous, as you are clearly explaining, that if the Flyers have the opportunity, they're going to be in range to possibly draft either Logan Cooley, Simon Nemec, Cutter Gauthier, David Jiricek, and then it's just so subjective. Okay, but again, that's a certain kind of consensus that may not play out for the reasons that you have clearly articulated.
Well, here's the thing. So you got a new coach now, okay? John Tortorella likes smash mouth hockey. Not irresponsible smash mouth hockey, but he likes guys that show up to the rink and want to play hard every night, okay? Some players don't like that, and, if the intent with the Flyers right now, they're clearly not going to rebuild, right? They bring in Tortorella. Fletcher's doubling down. I thought he was going to, maybe say, all right, let's maybe retool or recock. But they're not going to do that. It looks like. I don't think they will. They're probably going to spend in the offseason and maybe make a move or two. Maybe they think that their core is pretty good on paper. It looks good on paper. So, but maybe that's going to drive how they draft. And knowing that Torch is probably going to be here at least 3-4 years. That they want this kid to when he shows up, Torch is going to be like, I can't play with this kid. He's soft. He's an outside perimeter player. So maybe factor that in. I don't know how much input Torch is going to have on the draft. I mean, you'd like your coaches to have a say to a degree. But yeah, I think that the type of, you look at the plays that they have in the prospect pool in Philadelphia, a lot of strong, tough kids, but a lot of them get hurt a lot. So maybe you want the kind of quicker finesse guys who don't get hurt as much. It's weird, but I think if we're going to go look at need, I'm not drafting. You guys have plenty of defensemen. And I know Jiricek would be a kind of a unicorn because there's really no one like him in the system to a degree, but you got a million wingers, right? You had to let Connor McLennan go, and he was having a great year because you have so many wingers. So I'm looking at center ice for the Flyers. And if you have all these wingers, why not give them a playmaking pass first type of a high IQ, acute vision kind of a center? You might have had that. You thought you were going to have that with Nolan Patrick. Didn't work out. You're kind of hoping it turns out that way with Morgan Frost. But, create competition at the center ice position. I know you got the kid down, the local kid in the USHL, McLaughlin. Very good this year. But still, he's probably a little bit of ways away. So I'm from a need standpoint, I'm looking at center ice for the Flyers. And they're going to be centers there at 5. So if it's not going to be Jiricek or Nemec, I think they're probably going to go center.
Yeah, everyone in the Flyers Twitterverse is really kind of crossing their fingers that Logan Cooley could be that guy because he's, like you're saying, he's tailor-made for the Flyers. He kind of replaces a lot of the skill set we were hoping we were going to get from Morgan Frost, that we were getting for years from Claude Giroux. And look, the Flyers need a zone entry guy. The Flyers need someone who could be a power play quarterback along the wall. And they don't have that player right now. And they've been waiting for Frost. Frost has had a lot of injuries. And now we have John Tortorella, and we don't know if Morgan is going to be Torch's cup of tea. So if he's there, I think it's consensus among the scouts that Cooley would be the guy. The real question becomes if Nemec or particularly Jiricek is not there. And it's a choice between Cutter Gauthier, and that's contingent upon him being a center, and that's a projection, or somebody like Matt Savoy, who's smaller and shiftier, but in the same realm of a player as Logan Cooley. Where do you come out on that?
Well, I'm going to pick Savoy because I'm not saying that Logan Cooley isn't tough, because his toughness is different. His toughness is more like internal, where he's competitive. He doesn't like to be beat. He wants the puck all the time. Whereas Savoy, even though he's smaller, let's say, was he 5'9.5" or something like that? He played in the USHL for a year, his draft -1 season. And he was a tough SOB. He was smacking people around. He was hitting people in open ice. So I can't, he didn't play that way as much this year. Winnipeg had pretty lofty expectations. They wanted to win a Memorial Cup. It didn't turn out that way. But, I think Savoy has that, let's just say worst case scenario. You never want your top 5 pick to not be top 6 player. But let's just say worst case scenario. And Savoy, let's say, struggles out of the gate, or Cooley struggles out of the gate, and they're not producing. Who would you still want in the lineup, to at least learn the system and learn the league and learn the goalies while contributing off the puck more than on the puck? That would be Savoy more than Cooley, I think. That Cooley, and I'm not saying he's offense first because, you could kill penalties and so on, but I think that in terms of torts and, Flyers want to be a tougher team to play against. I think when he's not scoring, Cooley gets freaking 15 scoring chances a game. That's not going to happen when you get to Lehigh Valley. It's not going to happen when you get to the NHL. It's going to take time for that. So I think Savoy might be the better answer. Then that's another reason why I have him ranked one spot above him.
Gotcha. It's really interesting because I've heard that about Savoy, his competitiveness and how he's a factor when he doesn't have the puck. And that's just so important when he goes through the process, and all these guys go through the process of making that shift to the pro game. Yeah, and when you're used to having the puck all the time or being the center of attention, now what do you do when that's no longer the case? And we see a lot of that with Morgan Frost.
Yeah.
So just wanted to ask you about a couple other players and then maybe move on to some Flyer players that have been drafted recently that are highly counted on for the Flyers' future. I mean, we can't forget that the Flyers are 40 points out of the playoffs last year. And even under the best circumstances, I projected them to be no better than an 80 to 85 point team in a conference where you had to have 100 points to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And in a division where, admittedly, the New Jersey Devils are ready to just take off. I saw in your latest podcast, you were talking about how many high-level players they have in that organization. So what I'm getting is a mixed signal in terms of what the Flyers are doing. This year, with so many injuries, Farabee being injured, even with this whole thing with Fedotov, and you have so many players coming back from injury, like Hayes and Couturier, maybe this is the year the Flyers say, instead of getting that one big piece, maybe we add a lot of players that Torts likes and build, the culture, install a structure here and do things like that. And then next year we make our big move.
Yeah, well, listen, my beef with the Flyers the last couple of years has been that they haven't been a tough team to play against, and I call it tiny heart syndrome. They can't close out games. They start out, if they're down 1-0, the game's over. So anytime they were down 2-1 or 3-2 in the second or third period, I don't know what the numbers are, but it just, when I watch the games, I'm like, yeah, these guys never come back. And so the key, obviously goaltending has something to do with that as well. And I think, you're going to need, like you said, those guys in the bottom 6, guys that, and if they're in Lehigh Valley, if you got to get them in free agency, do whatever you have to do. But, I know LePerrier down there in Lehigh Valley is a pretty tough coach. He's trying to make these kids tougher, and he's not really coddling them and making them earn their ice time. And we'll see what kind of impact that has long term. But yeah, I think that the Flyers on paper have a pretty good nucleus. And a lot of those guys, I know like Giroux's gone, but a lot of those guys were there a couple of years ago when the Flyers were only, a couple of games away from going to the conference finals. So I think that Fletcher's definitely going to be spending, I think, in this offseason. But what I want to see is I want to see these prospects take the next step. You got with Farabee, fine, but you want to see some guys. I've been rating the Flyers prospect pool pretty high for the last 4 or 5 years because Hextall used to accumulate all those picks. And I'm like, I like what the Flyers doing. I like these guys, but they got to start, make it to the point where, first of all, they got to stay healthy. And the other thing is, say, hey, you know what? Lehigh Valley's too small of a fishbowl for me. I need to get out there into a bigger environment and prove myself and earn my keep. So we'll see. I think that they have kids that can make it this year. I think that whether it's Zamula or it's Cam York or if Lashinsky is freaking healthy, some of those kids I think are pretty good. That they've they've outgrown Lehigh Valley in the AHL, and they're ready for the next step. But again, we don't know what Fletcher's going to do with the bottom six. I mean, is he going to go out and give torch these support guys that he needs to hold leads and kill penalties, or is it going to be maybe a developmental year? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have York penciled in on the third pair for now. I mean, he actually got first pair time as one of the common partners with Ivan Provorov, as that situation is like a sieve with Ryan Ellis's injury, and that's the other injury that they're really, at a bad spot with. So, yeah, I think that you can count on him. I think players like Ronnie Addard and Bobby Brink need more time. But sure. Lashinsky, he's been hurt a lot, but he's going to be here. And if we ever get Wade Allison to stay healthy, he's another guy. But he's been glass. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
And like a million different injuries too. It's not like one thing it's always something new. It seems every month.
Yeah, and he's just like a wrecking ball out
there. He's good. He's good. You watch him play. He's good. It's crazy.
He's everything you want in a power forward. A third. He looks like a 15-goal, 45-point third liner. Yeah, and it's a tough guy. Stands up for his teammates. But he just can't stay healthy. And of course, Owen Tippett's going to be on the team. So yeah, Noah Cates. I think he's going to. He'll be a favorite of towards. So yeah, have some young guys that are working in. I don't think they're going to trade Oscar Lindblom at this point with the injury to Farabee. So he'll get another chance to have a full 2 years after, the cancer diagnosis. And that might be what the doctor ordered for him. So there's talent there. It's just, It's not that high level talent. And I just, with the cap situation, with JVR having another year left at a $7 million, he's not a towards player. So I just don't see the Flyers being able to do a lot unless they get very reckless. And that's our biggest concern here on the show. And it's been parroted by many people. Maybe this is a year you hang back, but I'm getting conflicting signals from the big rumor guys about what's actually going to occur.
Well, here's the thing. Next year's draft, you got two potential generational players in Michkov and Bedard, and the 2023 draft is going to be like a 2015 draft, maybe even like a 2003 draft, where you are looking at a whole bunch of 30-goal scorers and future all-stars and trophy winners and so on. So, if you have to build something, the Flyers have not made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons for the first time since the early 90s, right? 89, 90, 90, 91, that era, 91, 92, 93. So maybe it's time to say like, hey, well, we want people in the arena. We don't want to be embarrassing. We don't want to be giving up, 8, 9 goals a game like they were 2 years ago when Vigneault was there. Yeah. But, at the same time, maybe – try to be competitive and then sell off these guys that pending UFAs because they had a good season. They're playing for a new contract. You sell them off at the deadline. You tell your fans you gave it a shot, and then you're going to walk away. The guy that's going to be, let's say the Flyers are a top 5 pick next year. That guy at top 5 next year would have been number 1 this year. So it's one way to look at it if you're building the organization. But listen. That division, that conference is nuts. None of those teams, well, maybe Washington, maybe Boston, Pittsburgh, we're always waiting on them to fall, and they never do. They never do. They always find ways to hit the 100-point mark and make the playoffs. So, it's going to be a race really between the Devils and Columbus and Philly in the Metro, and then you got all the teams in the Atlantic with all the first round picks that they've gotten now, Ottawa and Buffalo and Detroit. So it's going to be highly competitive, dog eat dog world, and so I'm only hoping that the Flyers. Listen, you look at the Rangers, how they rebuilt. Yeah, the goalie helped. The goalie was a big reason why.
Sure,
he was a 4th round pick back in 2014, but. Still, you want to see your young guys be part of a I guess a rebirth, where your team rebuilds back and becomes a playoff team. So, if I'm the Flyers, I give it a shot, but unload at the deadline next year and aim for that high pick in 2023. And then maybe, once you got cap room, you could spend again. And because you still have guys in their prime and on the contract. So it's not like it's going to be the end of the world.
No, I agree, Chef.
We mentioned a couple other teams, like Ottawa's loaded to bear. They've had some great picks the last couple of years, and they seem to make a good stride last year. Who's going to be the surprise team? Do you think that who wins their draft? Going in there, maybe not. They might not have the best player, but they did the best job for themselves.
I think Columbus, because those guys don't care about consensus. They don't care about Russia, war, nothing. Those guys, Sirin and Kikalainen, they will draft anybody. And so they got a lot of picks. And so, well, I don't know if they have a lot of picks. I think they have the 2 first-round picks. That if I know, I'm just going to guess here, but I'm pretty sure that they have the Russian kids like Miroshnichenko and Yurov and Trekazov and Paravalov. These are top 15 quality kids that are probably going to fall. And so you're looking at Columbus not only getting those high kids with their first 2, what is it? I think they're at 6-12 or 6-10, but then they're going to get, they have, in the later rounds. So no one, and the way that I rate drafts is I give high grades to teams that draft the plays that I like. That's how it works. And so, Philly's always done it, and maybe I should, not rate those guys high. But I think Columbus is a. I always like the way that they draft when they have picks, and then you got to look at Arizona and Buffalo. I mean, Arizona and Buffalo both have multiple first round picks, and they Arizona sometimes plays cute with their picks, but I don't think Buffalo will. And speaking about teams on the rise. The Sabres, they got a wealth of riches, and they hit home runs at the draft. It looks like Deline is now developing into an all-star, and Tage Thompson, and they got Krebs in the Eichel deal. I mean, Buffalo is a team that I'd be concerned with more than out of everybody that didn't make the playoffs in the East, beside the Islanders, who are probably going to bounce back. I think Buffalo is going to make the next, they're going to take that next step forward. They're the ones that I would be concerned with.
Yeah. I mean, eventually teams like Boston, the Capitals and the Penguins are going to, fall back at some point. And the Penguins, their farm system is going to catch up with them. But
absolutely.
Yeah. But so if you had to make a pick, you're at number 5, kind of prognosticating, using some conventional wisdom. Who do you think the Flyers are going to pick? Not necessarily who you think. I mean, based on maybe some of the scuttlebutt that you run into when you scout these guys and league executives, whatever.
I think Cutter Gauthier solves a lot of problems for them, and I think he can be a center. He played on a line with Cooley, and Cooley is a playmaker, a puck-dominating kind of a guy. Gautier's like that too, except he's 6'2" or 6'1", 190, soft hands, very high IQ. Every time there was a 5-on-3, he was out there on the ice. I mean, that's the kind of guy you want. So, Couturier was a pretty high pick. I remember when Couturier was drafted, within a year, the articles were coming out. What's wrong with this kid? Why isn't he playing well? Oh, he's a bust. He's on the growing pains, and I think the issue with Couturier was he was blocked. I mean, Flyers had a pretty deep forward group in the early 2010s. So Gauthier would be a nice, he's a two-way type. He's not just and he's physical. He's got a great attitude. So he's the guy. If he's there, I'm drafting him. But Nemec or Jiricek would be an X factor for the defense core. I like Ronnie Added a lot, but being a right shot defenseman who you could match up every time that you play, a team in the East, they got a nasty top line. You need someone to match up against him. And I love Provorov. I always have, but he's not that kind of a guy anymore. Yeah. You want a guy like the other team's going to be like, oh, great, we got to play this guy tonight. And that's where the Jiricek comes in. So I think it's going to be one of those two guys. Gotcha. I think Torch would love either one of them.
Well, that's the other factor. Gauthier, if Gautier's really not a center, is he still rank him that high?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Even with all the wings the Flyers have, he automatically becomes the best wing in the pipeline. He's a unicorn. He's a 6'2.5", I think. 6'2.5".
200 already.
He could skate, He's a 200-foot player. He's competitive. He loves the game. I mean, there's a lot of things to like about him. I ranked him 6th in January, and no one was talking about him. No people. I mean, there were a couple of people talking about him, but I put him 6th on my list, and I said I'm keeping him there. Just from watching the kid, I fell in love with him, and then Central Scouting released their rankings about 3 weeks after mine, and there he was, ranked pretty high. So I think Gauthier is a guy that might even go higher than that. I think he might even be gone by 5 because you're looking at a team. All these guys watch the playoffs. All these GMs and scouting directors, they watch the playoffs when their teams are eliminated. I would hope they do. And you're watching, Minnesota's line of Eric Sinek and Greenway, and they're just, mashing freaking people. And,
they're trucking people.
Yeah, and the Blues, where they got 3 deadly scoring lines, and there's physicality on all 3 of them. McKinnon, there's a lot. Only the Leafs. Leafs are the only ones that teams aren't really worried about getting hurt. But every other team is like they have beef and strength up there. And when you want to build a team, the Flyers have a lot of skilled guys on the wings, guys that could do dual threats. Bobby Brinks, Zayd Wisdoms, Forsters. These guys could score and they could pass. But who's the guy that could, shut down a top line? And so I think maybe that's something that they'd be looking at if you're looking at need, but you also get one of the best players available in the draft.
Gotcha. You speaking of, as Chef rejoins us back now, the young players, you talked about guys like Ty Forster. He's probably, to me, at his ceiling, maybe like a part-time, like a minor star, someone who makes an all-star team or two in the manner of a Konechny, but he's a different player. He's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
He lost some time with the injury, but I still like him. What was your impression of him? And in the limited amount of time that he was able to come back, did he show some of that promise?
Yeah, he's always been Barry's. Well, I mean, this draft year, Barry was terrible, and he was the only guy that was doing it. I mean, he carried that team, and then at the deadline, they got a couple of guys, and they formed this powerful top line. But it always went through Forster, and then with the OHL shutdown, he goes to the AHL, and he's showing that promise again. And so I think he's done with the O. He doesn't need to. I know they have rules, and I think he'll be 20 at some point this year, or this coming season. So he's going to be in Lehigh Valley full time eventually. Or at some point, he's going to be there. But yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I didn't have him in the first round, but when the Flyers drafted, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And he's a very smart kid. He's mature. He could take. I mean, I know he's hurt, but he could take a beating and still control the puck. He's got a very high end wrist shot. And so, you have a natural playmaker like that with that kind of size on the wing. Not skating has always been a holding him back, I guess, if you want to say call it that. But look at all the great plays in the NHL who aren't great skaters: Mark Stone, John Tavares. It's all about hockey IQ more so than skating. And Forster's a pretty smart kid, so I'm high on him. I think as of right now, he's one of the top 2 or 3 prospects. I think Brink might be a little bit ahead of him.
Okay.
Because of the experience. It just has a couple, has a year on him. But yeah, like Wisdom's another kid. Like there are guys, we talked about Allison. There are guys that it's just going to create this intense competition in Lehigh Valley. I just hope LePerrier doesn't ruin them. I hope he's a little bit more patient with them, because it doesn't seem like he's a very patient guy, but
we're not fans. I don't. Yeah. I know at the time, and Chef, I'll get to you in a second. They wanted to kind of have some seamless transition from Lehigh Valley to the Flyers under AV, and then when that whole thing unraveled, LePerrier just seemed to lose control of them, and that situation kind of deteriorated. And then they rallied a little bit toward the end of the year, but just color me unimpressed, Chef.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that I know they did it, like you said, for continuity purposes. But I mean, is there someone else? I mean, I don't know if bringing Torts in here, and I know he's already started selecting his coaching staff. You think that filters down to the Lehigh? I mean, do you think they're going to want somebody more that's more developmental as a coach instead of a hard ass like that?
I mean, that's a
They
good
had
question.
Gordon,
Yeah, that's true. We had
Gordon was
Gordon,
very good.
and it
You know
didn't
how
seem to work out with upper management, let's just say.
Yeah.
You know how like in baseball, when a team goes through a slump, everyone blames the hitting coach. And we all know that unless you're like, Charlie Lau, Walt Reniak, like, the hitting coaches are just an ex-player that's going to, like, there's only so much you can really teach a major league hitter. So, I think the reason why I'm concerned with LePerrier is, these kids are different. LePerrier has like a million scars on his face. He's from a different era. These kids nowadays, they think differently. They don't really like play I don't say they don't play the game the way that he played, but it's just some of his press conferences, he doesn't really give a lot of compliment. Doesn't really compliment him that much. Someone's like, "Hey, this guy's had 5 points the last 5 games." Yeah, but he's got to work on his skating. Like, all right, so there's got to be a happy medium. Sometimes tough love can work. I'm going to keep an eye on that. I'm sorry, I really can't answer your question because I don't know how that's going to work out because I don't know what kind of relationship Torts has with LePerrier. If there were adversaries in the past, if there's a professional, rapport between them, I don't know. But it's interesting to see that the Flyers have a lot of finesse guys, and they don't really have these blood and guts, smash mouth types. I mean, they have some, but Bobby Brink isn't going to go and smash someone in center ice. It's not his game. So I'm like I said, I'm curious, and I pay attention to every farm system. I don't just focus on 1 or 2 teams. So you definitely don't want a guy to be detrimental. So Lehigh Valley, they had an up and down year this year. Like you said, they were out of a playoff spot, it seemed like, for most of the season. Then towards the end, it kind of picked up a little bit. They used up 8 million goalies.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see some stability in Lehigh Valley. I want to see guys healthy, and I want to have 3 or 4 goalies, not 9. And, that way, when you have intense competition, it basically gives the GM and the coach of the big club no choice but to promote these kids because guys are going to get hurt. But yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to what goes on with the Flyers kids because they're graduating a lot of the kids from the Canadian junior leagues in college. That right. Lehigh Valley is going to be just like last year. It's going to be a mostly prospect team. You're going to have who's the guy, Willman, and you'll have some veterans there. But LePerrier loves Willman, by the way, loves him.
Yeah,
he talks about him like he's freaking Sidney Crosby. But I think. I'm a big fan when AHL teams have prospects. I get that the local community wants a competitive team and they want the arena packed, but it's like AA or a single A ball in baseball. You want prospects down there. You don't want journeymen. So it's going to be. I think Lehigh Valley is going to be fun this year, though, and maybe LePerrier will lighten up a little bit. And
they that's it. You talked about earlier. I don't want to go too far down this road, but we had Shane Malloy on, and he talks about the Flyers' biggest problem is development, and the developmental process, is going to have to run through that coach. And if you don't think he's the right guy, and you just had to go out and hire yet another big name coach and a guy like Tortorella, you want all these young kids to come up and become teammates and have that camaraderie at that AHL level. You need the right guy leading.
That's how the mid-'80s Flyers were built. All those guys came through the system. All those guys came through, and they weren't even all-star guys. The Mellenbys and the Zezzels and the Tockets and Tim Kerrs. Like, you're going to have some star guys there. But yeah, I agree. You got to have. And I think that to a degree, Lehigh Valley, because the Flyers have had so many prospects over the years that they know each other and there's familiarity, but you're still going to need that one guy or those 2 guys to be like, hey, you come up, I'll carry you for a little bit, and then you got to, carry your own weight. But and that's what we're really waiting on for the Flyers is who's going to be that franchise type guy. Giroux's gone. Is it going to be Couturier? Does he have the ability, if he stays healthy, to develop into a late in the career kind of an all-star, or just improving on the great years he's had in the past? Is it Provorov going to have a resurrection? Is he going to, cut the BS and go back to the old Ivan Provorov? I mean, there's a lot of question marks. A good goalie, a consistent goaltending would help. Not to knock hard, because I know he's still young, but because goaltending, Torts, everywhere he's gone, he's had good goaltending. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I think the problem with Carter Hart is they rushed him in, and they went through 8 goalies when he came in, and it would have been nice to see them go and get a veteran and send him back down so we could get at least 100 games at the AHL level. But that didn't happen.
Yeah,
and I think defensemen and goalies. I'm telling you, like, this. I mean, they take more time,
sure,
and it's like interest in a bank. When you put the investment into the development, it's particularly those positions, you're usually rewarded at a much greater rate. I mean, how many defensemen?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look at Buffalo and how many defensemen they threw out there. Tyler Myers, did he ever reach a ceiling he could have had? Zadorov, Rasmus Ristolainen. We're looking at 3 guys right there, and Luke Shen into the bargain from Toronto. That probably could have been better players had there been more patience. Right? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, look at Bogosian. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, okay, obviously he's got a really good supporting cast, but I mean, obviously these guys, they don't become franchise types, and they kind of get comfortable into a middle pairing or like a middle 6 role if they're a forward. But yeah, I mean, listen, every GM, just like everything else in society, you got, really smart guys, you got lazy guys, you got impatient guys that aren't satisfied with the status quo. They always got to keep tinkering and tinkering. There really is no, the best thing, if you look at all the teams that have been successful in the past, is either one or two things. Either have a goalie to carry you, or you suck for 5 years. You get top 2 and top 3 and top 4 picks 5-6 years in a row. One of those two is going to work out for you. If you do that, you will eventually. I think like Boston is one of the outliers where they really never had that. They just had this culture, the smash mouth, hard nosed, tough physical defense. Balanced scoring up and down the lineup. But I've been following this Fly situation for a while now, and even going back to even when they went to the Cup in 2010, it's 1 year on, 1 year off, right? You make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, 95 points, miss the playoffs. But now it's like back-to-back seasons, no playoffs. And now it's like, okay, well, if that happens a third time now, there's no more buying. You can't do what the Rangers did in the mid to late 90s, where it sinks you deeper and deeper. You try to fix every problem with free agents and big names. So, these kids in a perfect world, they all play together, they develop together, and then they become the 1980s Oilers, and they have a great time and they win. But having 2 or 3 stars at the top is going to be critical. And it could start really with this draft. I mean, you're talking about 3-4 years down the road. Who's to say that the guy that they pick won't be an all-star, and the guy that Flyers fans like, oh my God, thank God we finally got a guy like this again.
Yeah, no, that's what they need. Hey, just a couple more players. I just want to get your opinion on. You mentioned Zayde Wisdom, Elliot Denoye. He'll be at Lehigh Valley, and Samu Tuomala. I'm not sure where he is headed. I think he might be staying in Finland, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Tuomala was a little, he was a kid I loved. I had him as a top 20 pick, and he went to the older circuit. He obviously, when you Carpat, defensive oriented team, I don't know if he moved from Carpat, but the other two, Wisdom, whether he goes to and I'm not just saying this because it's a Flyers podcast. Every time I see that kid play, whether it be in the AHL or the OHL, he's driving his line. He's a wing. But he was Shane Wright's winger, right? It was Wright, Wisdom, Chromiak back in 2019-20, the year that they drafted Wisdom.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, this guy, now Wisdom skating was a little clunky, but still, IQ, his hands, his playmaking was very good. He goes to the AHL because the OHL shut down, promising again. And then this year, I think he might have been hurt. And Kingston wasn't the same without him. Kingston was a good team. They had like 7 guys, almost 80, 90 points or 85 points. But when Wisdom showed up, I'm like, okay, good. Now reunite Shane Wright and Chromiak, and Shane Wright's going to get better again. But they didn't always stay together. No matter what line Wisdom went on, same thing again. He's playmaking, he's driving possession. So I think they got a steal in that kid. I really do. I think that he's going to become an NHL player. I'm not going to count out top line, but definitely middle six. He's a kid that you get him in the later rounds. Who cares? I mean, every time I see him, he produces and he's effective and he makes smart plays. So, and then Desnoyers, he played for Moncton, I think, right? And so his wing was the guy Dume, who was, or was it Halifax? Halifax. Okay.
Moncton was a year before. I think he got traded.
So, I know he was on. Okay, but so he played with the kid Dume. And Desnoyers is a center. He was the top line center for that team. Productive, energetic. He was on the Canadian World Junior team. Another kid that 2020 draft, very underrated for the Flyers, I think. And it's too bad that they let McLennan go, because I don't know if it was contract related. They just didn't have room for him. But those smaller kids, and I talked about it with Yariv, those smaller kids are competitive. They're able to impact plays beyond just scoring, impact shifts beyond just scoring. So, again, I'm a little biased because the Flyers always pick kids that I like, but I'm not. They're not going to all put up 100 points in the AHL. They're going to come here. They're going to be fourth line guys. But Desnoyers is a two-way type. He kills penalties, so I think he could find a nice role as a bottom six guy. You're wondering how much longer they're going to be patient with Stroll, right? They moved him to center. I know he was in Reading for a little bit. He can't skate, but he showed improvements to his game. Ratcliffe is another kid. He's had health issues, but he's a pretty he was a 50 goal scorer in junior, but I don't think he's going to be much of a goal scorer at higher levels. So this camp is going to be very interesting for the Flyers, the development camp and also training camp as well, because you're going to have all these kids coming in, and it's you're going to have to trim some fat, and they're going to get rid of guys that we've been pretty high on the last few years, but it's just the nature of the business. Yeah,
absolutely. Last guy I wanted to ask you about, because the Flyers are very high on him. They consider his number one overall prospect in goals, Alexei Kolosov. They were not anticipating him coming over anyway. Hopefully the situation with Russia will blow over by then, but they feel very, very strong about him, and I think he's their best prospect.
Yeah, he was drafted as an overager, but the thing about Fedotov and Kolosov is that they've been playing against men, and if you look at all the top goalies in the league last year, there's a lot of Russians that took 3, 4, 5 years to get to North America. You look at Sorokin, you look at Shesterkin, right? Vasilevsky obviously was a high first round pick. Samsonov in Washington, they're still kind of waiting on him. But yeah, I was a fan of Fedotov. I was a fan of the Kozlovic. He was good at the tournament a couple years ago, the World Championships, playing for Belarus, I think.
Right.
So goaltending, we all know it's been an organizational issue for decades, and if they want to say that he's their top prospect, I'll buy it. I was actually higher on Fedotov because I saw what he did last year, freaking carrying Siska to they rallied back from a 3-1 deficit. He made 45 saves in Game 7. So, and again, even all these goalies that you have, you want to have Sandstrom, Erstrom, Ustamenko, all of them. Create competition. The kids that didn't make it, put them in Reading. The kids that do make it, you put them in Lehigh Valley, and you have a three-headed monster if you have to. And then one of them is going to eventually challenge Hart and push him. So I'm positive about the Flyers goaltending situation. One of these kids is going to hit. I just don't know who it is though. But one of them will hit eventually.
Yeah, and when I said their top guy in vis-a-vis of the unsigned in the system per se, other than the AHL, yeah, Fedotov is that's the whole thing's a mystery. Last one from Chef.
It was about the goalies. I was going to say, you kind of sort of answered it. I was thinking, with Fedotov's situation, it doesn't look like, unless we get a jailbreak situation going on here, that he's going to be able to play anytime soon here. Which, are the Flyers stuck? Did it kind of have to go out and get a backup veteran? Or do you think like you said, that you hopefully one of these guys makes a push and says, you know what, I'll save you some money. Let me stay up here and let me try it. It's, if you're not confident about this season to begin with, I mean, in my opinion, you might as well throw up against the wall and see if it sticks. You know, I mean, this is the perfect season to do it if you're going to take a chance on a backup.
Yeah, I think that my prediction for Fedotov was that he was going to push hard in camp. He was going to challenge for either the backup or the number one in Lehigh Valley. And that this is a prediction that he was going to, if he went to Lehigh Valley, he would have been one of the top young goalies in the league. And if he went to back up Philly, at some point he would have stole a game or two and create a goal controversry. That's how high I was on this kid. Not draft wise, because he was a 7th-round pick. I don't know who he was. Way back then. But in terms of like what he did, he's following that same path. With the other kids, though, with Ustimenko, with Ursin, with Sandstrom, I don't think any of them are ready to go to Philly and be a full-time backup, because you still don't know what kind of heart you're going to get this season. Is he going to be up and down? Is Torts going to ruin him? Is he going to make him feel sorry for himself? You don't know. I think it's kind of a sensitive situation. So I think with Lehigh Valley, you're going to see, without Fedotov now, it's going to be a repeat of last year. But, if they're going to play mostly young kids, you got to worry about the scores being more lopsided, because, obviously a lot of AHL veterans, they want to make money. They want an NHL job. They don't care about the Flyers rebuilding, and they will score 8 goals on them if they have to. So it'll be a wake-up call. But I think that you'll see bounce-back seasons from all three of those kids. Ustimenko, I think, was hurt, and he didn't play all that well. Ursin was he the guy that got like lit up, and so I think you'll see bounce back seasons from them. But to answer your question, you got to get a veteran backup. You got to go out and spend the money, and then if one of those kids is out, is Lion still around?
Lion's in another organization. In fact,
he got in trouble. He just got in trouble recently. He's going to be suspended. His first 2 games of the AHL for flipping off the birds.
Oh my goodness! All right, so and Tomac is the other kid that I was thinking of. So
he's out too, I think. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. He's in Slovakia. Yeah. So I think maybe it's a situation where the Kozolov situation is he's in the KHL, and you're just waiting on him to his contract to end, and then hopefully by the time that he gets over here, the Fedotov situation is solved. One of those 3 guys, Ustimenko, Ursin, Sandstrom, like kind of wrestles that number 1 job for Lehigh, takes it away, and they're the number 1, and then you have 2 good goalies in the farm system, and then 2 good or decent goalies with the big club, and that's the good spot that you want to be in. But you got to get a veteran. You got to get somebody, because, especially with Torts, he might blow a game. Team starts off 2-7 or 2-10. Heads are going to roll, and it could just really liquefy pretty quickly. So you don't want to start throwing these young kids up there. Like, all right, here, you go ahead and face the Toronto Maple Leafs or face the Tampa Bay Lightning. After giving up 5 goals to, Charlotte.
So in other words, Chuck Fletcher should not lose Martin Jones' number just yet.
I'm not a big fan of Jones, but
But he did an adequate job last season. Seemed to find his game. And if that's what you're looking for, somebody in that price range, I'm not unsold on it. There's worse they could do around the league right now, and it fits their cap situation.
And the 23 draft, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Steve, we're gonna leave it right there for you, and because we've taken up enough of your time. We really appreciate it. But people can find you at thedraftanalyst.com. What else do you want people to know about your work?
My draft report that I've been working on for like the last 7 months. I release mine usually late, about a week before the draft. It's coming out tomorrow at about 5 p.m. So just go to thedraftanalyst.com. It's $29.95, but it's like, I mean, it's a monster.
Wow.
Wow.
It's got prospect depth charts for every organization, team reports, about 175 prospect profiles, 100 full page. And then I did a whole history of the lottery. Speaking of 2017, a whole history of the lottery from 95 to 2022. Do you know that the league has changed the lottery format 8 times in 10 years? I didn't even know that. I didn't realize it until I was typing up the history section. So I wanted to put it all in one area so I could reference it around lottery time. And it just shows you can look back at the good picks, the bad picks, so on, and got rankings. And I also got a 2023 draft preview, full 32, top 32 with scouting reports on each kid. So
is it available in a PDF form?
PDF, yeah. It's your PayPal or Venmo, simple click transaction. You get it, and it can last you all throughout the season too, because the depth charts and the team reports. It's able to help you stay up to date and fill things in along the way, and just wait for the next year's version to come out. Excellent.
So that's the draftanalyst.com. You have to go there tomorrow. You said around 5 p.m. Yeah, as you're getting ready for the draft.
About 4 p.m. Yeah, maybe a little bit earlier.
So you've heard everybody else's opinion, but Steve is not a consensus guy, and he has a track record. 15 years now he's building upon, and you got to get a hold of that. So anybody can contact you anywhere at social or.
Yeah, Twitter at the Draft Analyst. YouTube channel is called Prospect Film Room. I think I'm going to be doing a live stream tomorrow, day 1 of the draft. Usually I tweet every pick on day 2, but I'm gonna sit back and enjoy it this time and let someone else cover it pick by pick. And that's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm usually just in here working all the time, watching hockey.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Steve, thanks so much. We'd like to have you back on again in the future. Anytime,
guys. Love to be on. Thank you for having me on.
All right.
Yeah, awesome.
Take care.
Thanks,
now.
Steve.
All right, guys. Take care.
Right. Okay. So, Chef, before we go, just wanted to get your pick, the one you like them to pick based on the listing that you've been researching and what Steve had to say tonight. If you throw it all in a barrel, what do you think the Flyers will do, and what do you think they should do?
Wow. What I want them to do, I want Logan. I mean, that's a selfish part of me. I'll take that.
Logan Cooley.
Yeah, Logan Cooley. Sorry.
Okay. So he's from the US NTP, 5'10.5", 180.
Yeah.
Super skilled, kind of like the next Giroux, if there is such a thing, right?
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. So I think the U.S. League has come strides in the last couple of years, and they're proving, they're pushing out young, good talent, and they're durable and they're intelligent, and it's a very good system. And it's funny, you look down the list, and I make the joke every year. You see some, the guys that maybe have come from overseas, from Sweden, Finland, Russia, all those other places overseas, and their kids' names are in there now. So, and they're in the U.S. Developmental League. So I always think that's great to see that. What do I think they do? I think and if I happen to look at the list and see what's available, it wouldn't surprise me if they got Gauthier. Right.
Gauthier. Right.
Yeah, Gauthier. I had a teacher named Gauthier in high school, so
that's close enough.
So it's close enough. That's what I thought.
So Gauthier, at worst, probably a 25-goal winger, responsible. Top side, he's a center, and he scores 35 goals, like Russ Cohen was talking about last week. So. Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. I think at 5, I think we're in a unique position. It's pretty lucky, I think. At 5 this time. Either way, it looks like we're going to get somebody that's going to make an impact in the team in 2-3 years. So, and that's a good thing.
Maybe their top 2 teams, like in 2017, they're the ones that make the mistake this time, and we'll be the beneficiary. We'll get the Haskin, and we'll get the Makar, we'll get the Patterson.
But unlike that, like before, there were hints that some players weren't, as promising as they thought they were.
I agree.
And there was I have yet to hear anything of that caliber, let's just say, about some of these. I'm like, yes, Shane Wright's play slipped a little bit, and you hear about the little things, but overall, it's not. Exactly. And that was what I was just about to say. It has nothing to do with the character. It was their game, maybe fundamentals. And hey, can you blame them? Sometimes you lose your stride here and there when you're changing leagues and stuff like that, coming back from COVID. Either way, I think it's going to be a great, fun draft. And I think we're going to look back very fondly upon this draft class like we did so many others over the years.
I sure hope so. Just important dates. Let me see. The draft obviously is tomorrow night, the 7th and the 8th. It's a Thursday, Friday. The deadline for qualifying offers for RFAs is July 11th. Then free agency starts July 13th. And of course, you're going to have a lot of trades during this whole period. You have the World Juniors in August, and then the camps open in September. So that's just kind of a rundown, and just want a shout out to Jamie Pascal and Dave Pagnotta for some of that information. The Flyers have hired Brad Shaw to run the PK, and he worked with Tortorella when they were with the Blue Jackets. So just an update with him. That there's a comfort there. I think the offensive coach is going to be really important. The guy who runs that power play I'm hoping they get the Florida coach who was not renewed, Andrew Brunette. He's somebody that Fletcher had a relationship with, and Brunette was not a high skill guy, real skill. He was such a great power play player, and he got the most out of himself, which if you think about that and some of his comments about his dissatisfaction with the Panthers and their play, it kind of makes sense. I do think it would be an ideal situation. It would give them not only a good power play experienced coach, somebody who's been a head coach, someone who's been a successful player, but also grooms a possible successor to John Tortorella at the same time. So it could be a win-win situation. And I guess the last thing I want to touch on, two things. We have to mention Fedotov, but I'll be honest with you, Chef, I don't really know what to believe except that he was interdicted. He's in some military base. And I don't know how this thing's going to turn out. We're getting a new story every day.
It's crazy. Somebody else in trouble too?
They're not sure that Kirill Kaprizov is in any kind of difficulty, but there was a rumor he was getting a false military passport or something like that. That story is not true. From what we understand, the latest from Michael Russo of The Athletic is that he is still in Russia. Is he in any danger? Is it going to end up in a situation like Ivan Fedotov? I don't know. I can't say as we're recording this on Wednesday night, approximately 8:30 p.m. So I don't know.
Unfortunately, whether or not it is what it is it collateral damage from what's going on with the war with Ukraine? It quite possibly could. I mean, they could just be sitting there going, you know what? They can't put trade embargoes that are going to affect other countries or stuff like that. But what they can do is they cannot withhold any of their statesmen that get drafted and not grant them visas to get out of the country, just to make an impact or a statement worldwide. And I wouldn't put it past him either. He's that kind of personality.
Yeah, there's two sides to the story. There's not two sides to what's going on with Fedotov. Don't get me wrong, but let's just say there's a lot of mismanagement of world affairs all over the world by lots of different people on both sides. And I'm not equating Ukraine and Russia. Don't get me wrong. It's just frustrating as a fan. And I just don't like when sports and politics and world affairs collide. It doesn't work out very well. And I remember as a kid in 72 Olympics, that made an impression on me. I was 12 years old. And it's not just about the Soviet basketball team stealing the gold medal, which everyone acknowledges to this day. But of course, what happened to some of the other athletes, and I'll just leave that there. So, the other thing is good news. As we turn towards better things, we have a great show, a draft wrap-up show coming up on Monday night. Yep. So I hope you enjoyed what we did on tonight's show with Steve Kournianos from thedraftanalyst.com. Because we're going to have Kevin Durso from 97.3 ESPN South Jersey on Monday night, wrapping up everything that happened, the trades, the whole 9 yards. And Kevin's so comprehensive in what he does. So we're looking forward to that. So with that, we're going to sign off. Chef, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can get at me at Chef de LFB on Twitter.
You can find what I have to say on Twitter, at least, at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Don't forget the _520. With that, we're looking forward to the draft. And until next time, Monday night with Kevin Durso. Hope you enjoyed tonight and take care.